Uma fração de miligrama. E tudo mudou. Uma molécula que altera a nossa percepção. Uma vez experimentada, não vai ser esquecida.
Ich hatte dann ein wunderbares Erlebnis, aber ich wusste nicht, woher das kam. Alles, was ich dachte, war bildlich da. Es war wunderschön, ich hatte mich hingelegt zu Hause, ich war am Nachmittag, als ich nach Hause gegangen bin. Und dann ist das langsam wieder abgeklungen, diese merkwürdige Bilder sehen und das Beglückende.
Tudo começou em 16 de abril de 1943, na Suíça. Impassível com o terror da Segunda Guerra Mundial, o químico Albert Hofmann estudava remédios para a circulação sanguínea. Este jovem pai de família trabalhava na Sandoz, em Basel. Naquele dia, ele entrou em contato com uma substância desconhecida. Três dias depois, ele resolveu testá-la em si mesmo. Como era cuidadoso, a dosagem foi muito pequena. Mas a substância era mais forte que qualquer outra conhecida até então. Seu primeiro autoexperimento foi uma viagem ao desconhecido.
Und das war dann ein furchtbares Erlebnis. Also furchtbar, weil ich das Gefühl hatte, ich sei schon in einer anderen Welt. Und ich wusste, ich habe eine junge Familie und jetzt musst du gehen und bist schon weg aus dieser schönen Welt. Also ein furchtbar quälendes Erleben. Angst, das Gefühl, ja, ich bin in einer anderen Welt, ich bin ja nicht, wahrscheinlich ist das Ende, ich bin schon drüben, ja. Meine Frau kam heim, Mitternacht, und da war ich schon wieder in der positiven Phase. Da kam ich zurück und war dann gerade den Tag darauf wieder das Gefühl, als ich morgen erwachte, in ein neues Leben, neugeboren. Ich bin sozusagen schon auf der anderen Seite gewesen. Bewusstseinsmäßig eigentlich schon fast tot.
One trip like this can cause persistent depression, disturbing doubts, self-hate, the death of the ego, complete loss of identity that can occur.
I believe that every healthy person should try it.
What happens to you when you take a dose of the strange new drug called LSD?
In less than 2 hours, LSD will reach its climax.
Now, as a volunteer test subject, his training is worthless.
Em seu laboratório, Hoffman estudou a cravagem. É um fungo negro que ataca o centeio. A cravagem é conhecida na medicina natural desde a Idade Média. Mas uma das novas substâncias que ele isolou não afetou a circulação, e sim a psique humana. A dietilamina do ácido lisérgico, o LSD.
Und sofort hat man das realisiert, ich selbst auch. Das ist eine außerordentlich interessante Substanz für die Psychiatrie. Die Psyche wird verändert, das Bewusstsein wird verändert. Man hat ein neues Instrument in der psychiatrischen Forschung.
Depois dos primeiros testes clínicos na Suíça, a Sandoz decidiu produzir o LSD. O novo medicamento chamou a atenção de psiquiatras mundo afora.
Sandoz saw the opportunity to offer something quite amazing to the psychiatric and psychological circles. So they were actually sending samples of LSD to universities, research institutes, individual therapists, and they were asking, would you work with it and give us feedback if there is any legitimate use for the substance? So it came to the psychiatric clinic in Prague. My first LSD experience was extremely powerful. It really completely changed my life professionally and also personally. And I said, this is by far the most interesting thing you can do when you're a psychiatrist, is study these non-ordinary states of consciousness. So this is what happened in the last over 50 years. Whatever I did professionally was, in one way or another, was related to these non-ordinary states. So I was sitting in session after session with artists, with professionals, and writing the reports.
Látka začíná působit až po určité době. Zatím si uděláme záznam mozkové činnosti před pokusem.
Připravena.
Můžeme začít. Zavřete oči.
In the early years of the experimentation, we thought about the LSD session as experimental psychosis.
Zavřete oči.
That somehow, pharmacologically, we create some kind of phantasmagoria that happens to be similar to what psychotic patients experience. So that was a model of psychosis. And if we can somehow identify what's happening there, we'll be able also to find a substance that would neutralize it, so that we would have a test tube solution for the most important problem in psychiatry, schizophrenia and other psychosis, which would be like a holy grail in psychiatry.
Es war ja die ersten 10 Jahre eine Wunderdroge. Es war so ein wichtiges Hilfsmittel in der Psychiatrie für Patienten. Und ich war immer überzeugt, LSD, das kommt noch, seine richtige Anwendung. Das kann nicht untergehen, das ist unmöglich.
Three drops of this colorless, odorless, tasteless liquid would put you out of your mind for hours. If you haven't heard of LSD, you will. Impregnated sugar cubes is a common black market form. Sometimes a dose for a dozen is carried invisibly in a piece of blotting paper. An effective dose is incredibly small. These cubes contain only 150 micrograms. Why are you taking it?
To get high.
What do you mean by that?
Expanded consciousness, more awareness.
How does it compare with getting high on alcohol?
I've never been high on alcohol.
It's the opposite. It just seems to block you.
And this does what?
Opens you up.
You get more aware of things.
What kind of things?
Everything.
Are these people getting revelations from outside themselves? Or are they wallowing in delusions brought about by the drug's distortion of normal brain paths and processes? How permanent is it? And is it reflected in behavior?
Color. Just color.
Just color? You're going to... Is it moving color?
Yes.
Just patterns?
No, it's not patterns.
Not patterns. What kind of color are you seeing at the moment?
Green, orange, everything's centered around orange.
And are they moving fast?
No.
When I moved into clinical work, our approach was called psycholytic therapy, which was basically use of smaller or medium dosages, but a whole series of sessions. And the process was more like sort of gradual penetrating, like a kind of chemoarchaeology in the psyche, layer after layer. Then I found out that there was tremendous variability of the sessions, not just inter-individual, but if you take it repeatedly, each session will be significantly different, and there was a progression. So I started thinking about something like LSD as a catalyst. See, that doesn't create these experiences, but it makes them accessible. With this kind of understanding, LSD becomes comparable to what the microscope is for biology or medicine, or what the telescope is for astronomy. You know, we don't think that the microscope creates worlds that are not there. There's something is already there, but we cannot study it without the tool. Same, the telescope will not create all the billions of galaxies. Obviously, they have been there, they are there, but we need the telescope to study them.
Durante a Guerra Fria, outros grupos se interessaram por essa droga maravilhosa. O LSD chamou a atenção de vários serviços secretos internacionais. O principal era a CIA.
The Central Intelligence Agency was interested in LSD because it sought to develop a truth serum, an interrogation weapon for questioning enemy spies, suspected disloyal people within the CIA, any occasion that might require soliciting information from people against their will in order to gain an advantage, to loosen their tongue, to pry into their mind. This was the idea that the CIA had.
Do you know where you are? Where are you?
They knew it was very powerful. They suspected it could be very helpful, but they didn't know much about it. So they turned to outside institutions, outside experts to conduct research. Some of this research turned out to be pretty nasty. There was a special case up in Canada at the Elaine Memorial Institute in Montreal, where people were essentially used as guinea pigs for a terrible experiment. The idea was you break a person's mental patterns down by giving them high doses of LSD. When that phase was over, they would put them asleep for a long time using a sedative and then engage in a process called psychic driving, where they'd have the same message piped in over and over again, thousands of times, to see if they can instill this idea in terms of creating a new personality. It was classic brainwashing. The CIA wanted always a certain result. They wanted to be able to predict what would happen and then do something to make that prediction come true. LSD didn't always work that way, and they found they ran into problems because it was an unpredictable drug. The U.S. Army had more grandiose ideas about what they could do with LSD. In essence, the U.S. Army wanted to develop LSD as a weapon of war, as a psychochemical weapon that they could spray over a city. It would make everybody crazy for a temporary period, and the enemy soldiers were helpless to resist because they were under the influence of LSD. War without death. LSD warfare was the idea.
Here is a group of normal soldiers responding correctly to a series of routine drill commands. After receiving a small dose of LSD, they're confused and undisciplined.
The idea of being able to subdue, you might say, the enemy without harming him or killing him was very appealing. LSD was of interest because it was the most powerful drug available at that time to treat people with the psychedelic effects and so on, or to alter their behavior, which the CIA was interested in doing. And we weren't interested in either of those things. We were interested in finding something that would impair performance in the battlefield.
Wow.
Because LSD made some volunteers uncooperative, we wanted to have a small contained space where we could have the individual sit and we could televise him as well as the psychiatrist asking him questions.
Do you find the sensation unpleasant?
No, great.
You like it?
Very much.
I see. Okay. When you see things, where do you see things most clearly? In the central part of your vision?
Almost definitely. Around the ends of my peripheral vision, though. It's not to drive you crazy.
Say that again?
A lot of things going on, or were. Before.
On your peripheral vision?
Yeah, way in the outer corner.
I see, but the central vision is okay.
Oh, fine.
Take 7 from 92.
7 from 92? John.
Individuals react to the stress of LSD in various ways. Here's a subject who succumbs to what has been called cosmic laughter. as he realizes his predicament.
Let's get going now. It's serious.
Yeah, come on, seriously.
All right, now.
Stop the kid, you know.
You know I'm on a test.
I know that.
We didn't think that was the kind of result we wanted to produce in a battlefield situation. It would probably be dangerous for us. We might end up on the receiving end of a ill-advised bomb or heavy-duty weapon, and we were not interested in provoking that.
This is Delta One, over. Delta One, this is Alpha One. It is now 1232 hours. Set your clock to conform.
Wie kommt unser Bewusstsein zustande? Es kommt zustande durch das, was unsere Sinne in uns hereinkommt. Jeden Augenblick, was hier reinkommt, das macht unser Bewusstsein aus. Das geht durch unsere Sinne. Und was das LSD macht, die ganze Mechanik besteht darin, dass unsere Sinne verstärkt werden, enorm verstärkt werden. Dann sehen wir die Welt anders.
Well, an important thing about psychedelic experiences is that they take you way beyond anywhere that psychoanalysis or some related schools can actually reach. And that's where most of the emotional psychosomatic problems are coming from. And there are also mechanisms of healing and transformation that are much more powerful than anything you can do on the level of biographical material. And we have also talked to a number of people who just, had years of psychoanalysis, and they say they didn't even come close to where the first psychedelic session took them.
No fim dos anos 50, o LSD tinha encontrado seu lugar na psiquiatria. Era usado com regularidade em clínicas na Europa e nos Estados Unidos. Como as pessoas achavam que o LSD aumentava a criatividade, um número crescente de artistas e intelectuais começou a se interessar pela substância.
I'm going to give you this cup that contains lysergic acid 100 microgram. Will you drink it? I would like to ask you to describe your profession.
I'm an artist.
A painter?
That's true.
Yes. 1217.
This is purple, isn't it?
No, it happens to be black. You see it purple?
Yes.
Well, this is just a charcoal.
Mm-hmm.
Look at it.
See.
Why do you do that now?
Well, the square is the ordinary rectangle, you see. It's one of the perfect means.
I know, but are you trying to reassure yourself that you're capable of driving?
Yes, I think that's what I would like to do. I'd like to find out what reality I'm in.
2 o'clock. Anyhow, what I would like you to do now is to draw another picture of Paul. You still have that pleasant feeling that you described before?
Yes, I still have it. I'll never get over it.
This is a general feeling when you look around yourself, is that correct?
Yeah.
Now you're getting emotional again. Now look at the picture now. Look at the picture. Oh, come on, now concentrate on it. Just about right. Bill, suppose you take a look at these 2 pictures and compare them. And let's see if you have any comments. Do you see any big difference?
Not really. The eyes, for example, are the same to me. And the line of the nose is the same. And the mouth is still a sweet mouth.
248. He's now flying high.
I feel these lovely colors vibrating all over me. Oh, it's lovely.
Any lines?
Oh.
Any forms?
Just like the shimmering of water, you know.
Do you feel happy?
Yes.
Oh, you must be, because you have tears in your eyes.
Oh.
Is that a beautiful experience, would you say?
I would say yes.
Describe it again.
Oh, I don't know. It's just giving and...
You're doing fine. Just try to describe it.
Oh, you don't know. You want to give yourself... You want to give yourself as much as you can.
LSD oder Psilocybin sind strukturell chemisch verwandt mit eigenen Botenstoffen im Gehirn und greifen eben in einen Teil des Gehirns ein, das andere Hirnteile überwacht, im Verbund. Und dadurch kann LSD bei kleinsten Dosierungen eben schon sehr wirksam sein. Wir können herausfinden, wo greifen solche Substanzen im Gehirn ein. Wir können die psychologischen Veränderungen lokalisieren. Wir können schauen, was sind für Netzwerke aktiv. Die emotionalen Areale, die für die Angst zuständig sind, sind zum Teil herunterreguliert. Andere, die ein Glücksgefühl erlauben, sind aufreguliert. Und das Visuelle wird von innen aufgefüllt. Also das innere Leben wird enorm verstärkt. Ein guter Trip ist eigentlich eine Ich-Auflösung, die stetig vorangeht. Man verschmilzt mit der Umgebung, man gibt die Kontrolle auf, aber man kann das genießen. Man fühlt sich eingebettet, eins. Und dabei erlebt man auch ein Glücksgefühl. Und Raum und Zeit werden aufgegeben, das ist eine persönliche Anschauung. Und man fließt mit dem Erleben. Man ist das Erleben selbst. Das ist diese ozeanische Selbstentgrenzung.
Na metade da década de 50, o pesquisador americano Gordon Wasson fez uma descoberta misteriosa no México. Um cogumelo comum, engolido como um sacramento durante rituais religiosos para entrar em contato com o mundo dos deuses. Gordon levou amostras desse cogumelo para casa, em Nova York.
Dazumal wurden diese Pilze dann chemisch untersucht, zuerst in Amerika und dann auch in Europa, in Paris. Man hat nichts entdeckt, man hat die Wirkstoffe nicht isolieren können. Und dann hat man gedacht, ja, in Basel gibt es doch einen Stoff, das LSD, das dieselben Wirkungen hat. Und man hat uns dann angefragt, ob wir Interesse hätten, diese Pilze zu untersuchen. Und so hat dann das LSD diesen Pilz in mein Laboratorium gebracht.
Die Naturwissenschaft zeigt, was da ist. Objektiv gelten für jedermann. Aber man muss es sehen und muss darüber nachdenken. Und der Naturwissenschaftler, der sieht die Geheimnisse, die objektiven Geheimnisse. Und ich glaube, ein Chemiker, der nicht ein Mystiker ist, der ist kein richtiger Chemiker, der hat es noch nicht erfasst.
Enquanto ele analisava o cogumelo mexicano, Albert Hofmann fez outro experimento em si mesmo. Assim, ele e sua equipe conseguiram isolar o princípio ativo pela primeira vez. Era psilocibina, um composto químico muito próximo ao LSD.
Der Herr Wasson war sehr beglückt und so hat er gesagt, er möchte uns gerne nach Mexiko mitnehmen und diese Wunderwelt zeigen. Und so sind wir dann auf diese Expedition gegangen in Mazatekenland im Süden.
O americano levou Hoffman até Maria Sabina, uma curandeira idosa e muito respeitada na terra mazateca. Os dois pesquisadores queriam testar 2 tabletes de psilocibina nela.
Mein Freund Gordon, der hat der Maria Sabina erklärt, wir hätten nun den Geist des Pilzes isoliert. Sie können jetzt auch mit diesen Pillen eine Zeremonie machen. Dann hat sie also eine Sitzung organisiert und als dann diese Pillen verteilt worden waren, gab es eine wunderbare Zeremonie, die bis in den Morgen gedauert hat.
Und in diesen heiligen Drogen habe ich praktisch LSD gefunden. Das gibt dem LSD auf seine Bedeutung. LSD gehört nicht nur der Wirkung nach, sondern der chemischen Struktur nach zu diesen Drogen. Die vor Tausenden von Jahren hat man die gefunden aus der unendlichen Pflanzenwelt. Holt man etwas heraus und sagt, das ist heilig. Und dann, aber das ist auch ganz entscheidend, die wurden immer im sakralen Rahmen gebraucht. Die Indianer heute noch. Man muss sich vorbereiten, man muss fasten, man muss beten. Und dann kommt man mit den höheren Mächten, dann kommt man in eine andere Welt.
Califórnia, um grupo de jovens começou a viajar o país, os Merry Pranksters. Entre eles estava o escritor Ken Kesey. Desde seu best-seller Um Estranho no Ninho, ele pôde ter uma vida independente. O romance foi inspirado por sua experiência com LSD, quando foi um voluntário nos testes de uma clínica californiana.
Psilocybin, mescaline, LSD, the government was doing experiments there, and the drugs began to get out into the world. So Ken had a wide circle of friends. I love parties, but the alcohol was ruining it for me. I can't drink. And when LSD came along, I said, hooray! Here's another direction to go in. We had some LSD that was in a package, and we had to create doses out of it. And that was very difficult to do. We wanted to make small doses, not so big. Well, that was really hard to do. So in trying to create a way to distribute this to other people, we sort of got very deep into it ourselves. You know, sort of magic carpet rides inside of our own minds. And couldn't help but talk about these things. And so the minute you start to talk about this, everybody wants some.
Em todo lugar que o ônibus parava, tinha festas com LSD. Era o teste do ácido, um rito de passagem para um estilo de vida novo e psicodélico. Millbrook, uma cidade na costa leste americana. Na casa de campo abandonada de um patrão rico, o ex-professor de Harvard, Timothy Leary, fundou uma comuna psicodélica.
Well, the first experience I had was with 7 little mushrooms in Mexico. For the 5 hours after I ate these mushrooms, I learned more about psychology than I had in the preceding 16 years as a psychologist. And since that time, I've done almost nothing but attempt to study, to learn more about how these experiences are produced and how they can be used for man's benefit.
Em Harvard, Leary colocou o estudo de drogas alucinógenas no currículo. Foi o começo do fim para o ambicioso professor e sua equipe nessa universidade de elite.
The one thing that it differed from the accepted social paradigm is that we took the drug ourselves. Because Leary, now would be like in behaviorist paradigms, you wouldn't do that. And the chairman of the department was pissed off at us for doing that, and thought that was unscientific. And they said, if you do these studies quietly, it's going to be okay, like that. But that was not Leary's vision. You see, he had the vision. It was a democratic vision, egalitarian. This is too good not to share with everybody. Who are we to say?
Tim Leary e sua equipe acabaram sendo demitidos de Harvard. Seu novo quartel-general, Millbrook, Era um lugar para contemplação e aventura.
Well, I had a great time at Millbrook. I mean, it was a place to introduce people to the psychedelic experience in the most beautiful way possible. It was a center for people to come from every walk of life, from the highest aristocrat and noble and royal person down to the dirtiest hippie. Everybody came there. It was a mecca for psychedelics. LSD was a tremendous leveler. No matter what level of society you came from, when you turned on with someone from another member of society, that class division did not cloud your vision. You could see that person clearly, and you could see them as a friend.
Any moment, somebody has his inclinations.
So the place was beautiful. It was 2,600 acres of northern New York scenery. And you just walk out there high, and no one was going to bother you. You were miles from the main gate. My experience at Millbrook was not about curing ill people, but making well people weller, about moving into the cosmic understanding of our existence here on life. We're not just dumb beasts brought to walk in one path all of our lives. We are here to fly.
Dr. Leary, what are you up to here?
We teach the science and art of ecstasy. We teach people how to turn on or how to go out of their minds. By turn on, we mean to tune in, to get beyond your routine ways of thinking and acting and experiencing. And we often say that we're teaching people how to use their head. The point is that in order to use your head, you have to go out of your mind. You have to go out of all of the static, symbolic ways in which you think.
Und dann hat er eine Bestellung gemacht an die Firma. Ich weiß nicht, 200 Gramm oder LSD oder ein halb Kilo Psilocybin und so. Und dann hat er mich eingeladen, zu Berlin zu kommen, und er würde große Veranstaltungen machen, große Kongresse und so weiter. Haben geschrieben, das würde ich nicht machen. Es ist alles in Untersuchung, warum machen Sie schon jetzt diese Propaganda, wo alles noch im Kommen ist.
Leary was a provocateur, yes. He liked being provocative. He liked, saying things in a little way that got people a little, And he didn't care if they misunderstood. He said, think for yourself.
America today is an insane asylum. The American people are completely hung up on material acquisition, on power, on war making. It's an insane asylum over here. And it's our goal to lift the spiritual level of the American people. We're going to try to bring about a religious renaissance and a spiritual revolution. In the next 5 or 10 years, we expect that between 20 and 30 million Americans will be using LSD regularly in their spiritual development and in their psychological growth.
Na Califórnia, o movimento psicodélico cresceu muito rápido. Haight-Ashbury, um distrito decadente de São Francisco, viu sua popularidade aumentar.
It was sort of a very exciting time in the Haight-Ashbury. It was lovely. There was a very good community spirit. Little stores were opening down on Haight Street. People were very friendly with each other. We all knew each other in the neighborhood. And they would come up with wonderful ideas, like let's have a party in some corner of the park, and so the band would come out and bring their instruments.
The band called the Grateful Dead have announced they will make music in the park. And the crowd moves along, provided with a place to go, something to do.
In the 60s, LSD was important because it reinforced a sense that change was possible. Because if you can be one way, 1 minute, take a tiny little chemical called LSD, and then an hour be in another dimension of universe of seeing fantastic things, feeling things you didn't even know you could feel, hearing things you didn't know could be heard that way. If you can do that to your mind with this tiny little pill, wow, anything's possible.
We tell young people today, drop out of school, because schools, education today, is the worst narcotic drug of all. Don't politic, don't vote. These are old men's games, impotent and senile old men that want to put you onto their old chess games of war and power. Drop out. Tune in with natural things. Take off your shoes. Get back in tune with God's harmony. Surround yourself with beauty and sacred objects. You can't get caught in the conforming, rote lockstep, which we call American society.
Und ich habe ihm dann den Vorwurf gemacht, dass er den jungen, ganz jungen Leuten LSD aufdrängt. LSD braucht Vorbereitung, braucht eine gewisse Reife. Und das ist unverantwortlich, dass man Menschen, deren Psyche, deren Bewusstsein noch in Entwicklung ist, mit einem solchen Instrument hineinpfuscht, hineinfährt. Da habe ich ihm als Vorwürfe gemacht.
So then at Millbrook, when our supplies were cut off, Timothy said, we're all psychologists here. Nick's the only one with a chemical background. Why don't you start making, the sacraments? I said, okay, I'll give it a try. My training was anthropology, but I had been involved growing up in the laboratory my whole life because my father was a chemist. So all of this was familiar and easy for me. I studied it, I became a chemist. We gathered the equipment and the materials before we actually could work. I mean, basically it broke down into making an underground laboratory. So where am I going to do this? Well, I started out working in my mother's attic. And then I moved down to the basement. Then I rented a small industrial place. Then I rented a larger industrial place. And then I moved to California. And so we rented another industrial property in San Francisco, 4,000 square foot warehouse. There are syntheses of LSD that take 7 seconds, and it's done. Boom. You get everything ready, takes a few hours, put it all together, you add it together, you stir it for an hour, it's done, you have your LSD. Now the question is, how do you get it out with the starting materials that have been left over, with the isomers and byproducts, and how do you get that all out so that you will have only like 99.9% LSD? So that means you have to recycle that material again. And so you recycle and recycle and recycle. And the process of making very pure LSD is extremely tedious. And we were making large amounts, and we were able to purify in large amounts to 100-gram crystallizations. That's 1 million doses.
Nas ruas, o LSD, ou ácido, era tolerado pela polícia no início. Consumir a droga da moda não era proibido.
San Francisco is where LSD was first marketed, where it is most readily and cheaply available. In the park of a bright afternoon, there is a hippie wedding. The preacher is a man called Teddy Bear. He is a dope dealer. LSD washed down with wine is the only sacrament. There are no vows. She will be his woman for as long as they feel like it.
You take Kathy to be your woman, for your wife, be married before God, before the people.
What obviously was happening in people who were taking psychedelics, particularly the young generation, is that they could not agree anymore with the standards of the society that was around them. They develop a whole different system of values, a different life strategy, and so on. And part of it certainly was very strong anti-war feelings, because when you have what I call transpersonal experiences, where you feel essential oneness with other people and even with animal species, with nature and so on, it has very significant implications for how you feel about war, people killing each other. So psychedelics became, very, very important instrument of transformation, a change of a worldview in a way that was really challenging the old conservative values.
I was just doing this from my heart, out of faith that this was the right thing to do. And everywhere I went, I gave it away, and I saw what it did to people, and I said, this is good. I mean, 5,000 doses of the Orange Sunshine was a little teeny bag like that. That's a whole division of soldiers. We sent hundreds of thousands of tablets to Vietnam for free. We were supporting all the war protesters. So why not support our brothers and sisters, same age, but had been drafted and dragged, almost in chains to be killed in Vietnam? Why not give them the same medicine that was causing the movement?
Peace demonstration brings out 50,000 marchers in downtown San Francisco, pacifists and hippies together.
Bombs in Vietnam exploded home.
the rebellion in the 1960s, I think psychedelics were part of it, very significant part, but I don't think they were the cause of what was happening.
LSD became a symbol of all that was going on that was frightening, of all that seemed to be wrong. It was an easy scapegoat, easy target for people who wanted to denounce the youth rebellion, denounce the anti-war movement. Very easy to denounce the drug or the drugs that were associated with those movements. The things that were said about LSD in the 1960s were in many ways ridiculous.
It's not always easy to undo what I've done.
LSD? I've heard about it. I can see through the walls.
Nothing was not extreme with LSD. It was projected in a way that made it very provocative, very alluring. Well, gee, this drug gonna send me to the grave, the mental institution's prison, and to the gates of heaven? And I'll have the best sex I ever had in my life. Well, that's pretty interesting.
KRON-TV asked Governor Ronald Reagan to comment on the problem.
Well, I'm terribly frightened by the problem of LSD. I think there's been a great deal of misinformation by those who seem to see no harm in it. But as a parent and as a citizen, and certainly now in this position, I am greatly concerned. There is nothing smart, there is nothing grown up or sophisticated in taking an LSD trip at all. They're just being complete fools. Anyone that would engage in this or indulge in this is just a plain fool.
Depois que debates públicos sobre os perigos do LSD se tornaram cada vez mais severos, o estado da Califórnia reagiu em outubro de 1966. A substância foi ilegalizada.
And we were moving from legal to illegal. And my status changed from one who was a minor criminal to one who was a serious felon. I mean, I've been convicted many times. I've spent time in 14 different prisons. All of this has happened to me as a result of my devotion to psychedelics. So am I a criminal? Of course I'm a criminal.
Pouco tempo depois da proibição do LSD, mais de 20 mil pessoas se reuniram no Parque Golden Gate, em São Francisco. Hippies, estudantes que se opunham à ilegalidade da substância e vários manifestantes se reuniram em um protesto.
Six words. Turn on. Tune in, drop out.
O som do movimento jovem conquistou os grandes estúdios de televisão. A nova mídia de massa espalhava a mensagem dos hippies pelo mundo inteiro.
The city of San Francisco has been warned of a hippie invasion come summer in numbers almost too staggering to comprehend. Some estimates run as high as 200,000 young people from all parts of the country can be expected to invade the city, and the influx will affect primarily the Haight-Ashbury.
The media put in a big story about the Haight-Ashbury, and it was this lovely place to go, and you might see John Lennon, or, perhaps, anyway, they created a monster for us. And within a few weeks, it changed. People came from all over America by the hundreds, and then the thousands. And by early summer, there must have been 10,000 people sleeping on the sidewalks and in the park and in every alley, and, and trying to, hungry and homeless, and it was crazy.
Here in San Francisco, Haight Street, on one of the dance floors, and you had 2,000 people all taking 500 micrograms of LSD. I thought this was going to be madness. I thought this would have been madness in our context. I couldn't see how that could work. How would you handle bad trips?
Dama na mesa.
Quando o menino vem visitar o pai, a mãe do filho fica na casa dele, de biquíni, sentada no sofá que eu comprei.
Elas têm dúvidas.
Ela é bonita, Bárbara?
Eu não pegaria se eu fosse homem.
E eles respondem.
Ela é gostosa?
Na lata. Entre no nosso site e mande sua pergunta para o Cartas à Mesa. Estreia nesta sexta, 11 da noite, só aqui no GNT.
Ele nem imagina o que o espera essa noite. Assinei o Sexy Hot. Fiquei cheia de ideias com as diferentes faixas temáticas e fetiches para todos os gostos. E todas aquelas novidades sobre o mundo do sexo que Vino penetra vão apimentar a relação. O melhor é que ninguém vai saber de nadinha. Assine o Sexy Hot e curta tudo com privacidade e segurança. O resto é com vocês.
Quando cheguei, tudo estava virado. Apenas me viro, mas eu mesma viro os olhinhos. Só entro no jogo porque estou mesmo depois de esgotar o tempo regulamentar. Eu vou lá, no canto do cisco, no canto do olho, a menina dança até o sol raiar.
1967. O movimento psicodélico a todo vapor. Era o verão do amor.
We're going to do the English and American combined anthem together, okay?
There is a steady flow into San Francisco hospitals of young people who have freaked out and been picked up by the police in a state of desperate terror.
Where are you taking me? Where are my friends? Do my friends know I'm here? Where am I? Where are we?
Come here.
Where am I?
You're in the hospital here. Come on.
Who are you?
I'm Dr. Documenta.
The bad trip is a frightening thing to witness. It must be far more terrifying to experience.
Where are you taking me? Where am
You're
I?
right around here to the desk. You're in the hospital.
Who are you? Hello, I'm a nurse. What's your name? Your hands are cold. What's your name? Joan. Joan, I'm a nurse. Gus? I don't want to be here. Where are my friends? It's all right. You should get going. It's all right. I'm a nurse.
Nach meinen eigenen Erfahrungen hätte ich nie gedacht, dass ein Stoff mit dieser Wirkung jemals auf die Straße kommen könnte. Ja, der Missbrauch. Ein Stoff, wenn der einmal in der Welt ist, wenn er einmal existiert, dann hat man das nicht mehr in der Hand.
The greatest pushers in this country today are the missionaries who make and distribute LSD because they are convinced that it's a wonderful way. As that poisonous, evil man, Dr. Timothy Leary, has said, it is a way to turn on, tune in, and drop out.
O presidente Nixon declarou que Leary era o homem mais perigoso dos Estados Unidos. Pouco tempo depois, pegou uma pena de prisão draconiana por posse de 2 baseados.
What happened with Leary made the psychedelics much more dangerous than they would be in responsible hands. Certainly increasing the risks and minimizing the benefits, and literally killed, legitimate research.
A droga mágica de Hoffman se tornou sua maior preocupação. O LSD foi parar no lugar onde começou, na psiquiatria, onde ainda era tolerado em algumas clínicas.
When I came to the United States and I joined the team at Spring Grove, we were using an approach that is now known as psychedelic, where a dose is significant. It's between 300 and 600 micrograms. We asked the patients to keep their eyes closed. So we actually were using eye shades. We were using headphones, hi-fi music, and the talking was done before and after. That was a much more effective approach in terms of therapy, in terms of personal transformation.
Dean Caldwell is arriving for his 3rd LSD session. Cancer of the bowel gave him almost constant pain, but this was controlled for over 6 months as a result of his previous session. As well as that, the drug has helped him come to terms with his condition and even enjoy the life he knows will end soon.
They could take a pencil and make it look like...
When we were doing the work with cancer patients, the basic assumption was that they would somehow very radically change their concept of death.
Did you get the last drop?
Every drop.
These were people who knew that they could die in a matter of weeks or months, and they were able to be reconciled. And their way of being, actually, in the world from day to day changed dramatically. It was a very, very successful study, besides being very moving study, as you can imagine. People come first programmed by our culture that we are basically our body. And suddenly comes an experience that shows you that you are something much larger, that you are not really just your body. And so you start now looking at death as something that's death of the body. And you get a sense that there is the death is a kind of an adventure in consciousness, and there is a sort of a large dimension there that you actually knew nothing about.
Depois que a autorização especial acabou para a psiquiatria, o LSD passou a existir só no submundo, como uma droga ilegal. A pesquisa em substâncias alucinógenas parecia fadada a desaparecer.
These compounds were so demonized. The whole area was so discredited that we had this phenomena in which, for, better than 30 years, the consensus opinion was this research was too dangerous or too edgy to be done. We started our work with psilocybin in about 2000. It was difficult, but we got approved. People who are eligible for our trial are people who have anxiety and or depression secondary to their cancer diagnosis. And they are struggling with these existential questions of life and death and their own psychological discomfort. They go through 2 days of screening in which they receive a physical exam, extensive psychiatric and psychological testing.
51. And Julie?
So after preparation, the volunteers schedule for their psilocybin sessions. What we would want and hope for them is that they have an experience that's uplifting and alters their perceptual set in a way that makes the remainder of their life and their struggle with their disease process something that's really quite manageable for them.
The prognosis was very poor. There were so many treatments, and since I have a scientific background, I got very preoccupied with researching everything, micromanaging. And so my life just kind of got narrower and narrower. I got more exclusively focused on the cancer. And I became more withdrawn. Finally, my daughter and friends sort of told me that I needed to do something. But I had no previous experience with psychedelics, so I didn't know what to expect exactly.
like this is for you.
A high proportion of volunteers have what's called a primary mystical type experience. And they're absolutely sure that this experience is more real than everyday waking reality. And it's that element, I believe, that imprints this experience into people's consciousness in a way that has huge value going forward.
The beginning of the effects start in about 10 minutes. And it's like your brain is going offline, you know, one part at a time. And I tell people the story to make it a little clearer. Since I do a lot of sailing, if you're out in the open ocean and you were to fall off your boat, you turn around and the boat's gone, and then pretty soon the water's gone, and then you're gone. You don't have any sense of self anymore.
Okay. Is that comfortable? That's good.
Okay, now put some headphones on you. Okay.
Okay, and remember to let us know how the volume is, if you want it higher or lower. And
For the first hour and a half, it was pretty frightening because I was fighting it. I was resisting. I wanted to open my eyes and make things snap back into place. If I didn't have the help of the people there, I would have left the room and tried to walk around and get things to focus back in again, you know, to look familiar again. So the supervision, I think, is very important.
just the music. Just enjoy it.
Yeah, after about an hour and a half, I calmed down. At one point, I thought I might be in a cathedral, and I thought that it might be a good chance to talk with God. So I, just in my mind, I said, well, if there was ever a good time, this is it. So, talk to me. And nothing happened. I did it again, and nothing happened. There was just an experience of familiarity or tranquility, and during that time I could pull up past relationships or current relationships and look at them in great detail, and it was as if I was sorry. The depression itself lifted. I might fall into a depression, but I can pull myself out of it pretty easily. It fundamentally changes the way you approach the world, so you're opening out instead of narrowing down into a negative spiral. It's almost unbelievable that after one day, and not any follow-up medications or anything, that this could happen.
I have had in my psychedelic sessions, quite a few experiences where I actually felt that I've already died, that I was in the realm sort of beyond death. Was very, very convincing, and I was very surprised when I actually returned to the situation where I took the substance. So I consider it very plausible that there is an experiential world that we go into after the body dies. But of course, you will never know until you get there. But it's like a very, very interesting journey.
Well, right here is where it was painted, "Nothing lasts." That's what it said.
Verzaubert ist die ganze Welt, im Grunde genommen. Je tiefer man in die lebendige Natur hineinsieht, desto wunderbarer erkennt man sie und ich glaube auch, man fühlt sich dann auch geborgen. Man gehört ja zu dem und man ist begnadet, man kann es sehen, man kann es erleben. Eben, das Bewusstsein ist schon das größte Geschenk des Schöpfers an die Menschen, dass er ein Bewusstsein hat, eben, dass er seiner Schöpfung bewusst wird, dass wir seiner Schöpfung bewusst werden, dass wir nicht einfach blind durch das Paradies gehen.